I beat my wife, who loved me with all her heart, to the point of hospitalization and turned myself into the police station. All because, in my last life, my wife's old flame Mike Smith came looking for her after his divorce. First, she lost control at Tiffany & Company, smashing a display case, and then lost control of her car while trying to flee, causing a multi-car pileup. Later, the Tiffany & Company manager and the driver found me and insisted that I was the one who did it. I tried to prove my innocence, but all the surveillance footage showed my face. My wife also insisted that I had done these things because of a bout of depression. I was stabbed to death on the spot by the victims' families. When I opened my eyes again, I was back the night before my old flame trashed Tiffany & Company. I left my wife, covered in wounds, at the entrance of the emergency room. My impatient attitude and the large and small wounds all over my wife's body didn't look like she had just fallen. At this moment, 2 police officers came in and asked, "Who called the police?" I immediately raised my hands and put them in front of them. "Officer, I called the police to arrest myself. The person I hit is still in the emergency room." The police officer gave me a surprised look, and after investigating with the hospital nurse, they took me directly back to the police station. The first thing my wife Sarah Johnson did after leaving the emergency room was to bail me out. I really fell. "It has nothing to do with my husband," I retorted. "If I didn't hit you, how did you get whip marks?" Sarah Johnson glared, frustrated beyond words. "David Lee, you're crazy, I'm trying to save you. I refuse to listen. If I do something wrong, I should be punished. It's just and right." Sarah Johnson trembled with anger, but no matter how she tried to persuade me, I insisted that I had intentionally injured her. Because I voluntarily surrendered and my attitude of admitting my mistake was relatively good, the police officer immediately locked me up for 5 days. Sarah Johnson could only be pushed back to the hospital by the nurse. But in the police station, my heart felt more at peace than ever before. In this last life, I wouldn't get tangled in those things again, right? In my last life, my wife's old flame Mike Smith divorced and returned to this city. As soon as he appeared, my wife Sarah Johnson's heart was hooked away, and she almost never came home at night. While I was suffering from electroshock therapy at the local clinic, my wife hurriedly left after receiving a call from Mike Smith. "Mike Smith is drunk, I'll pick him up first and then come back to pick you up later." But she forgot to turn off the machine before she left. This lasted all day, and I howled in pain from the electroshock therapy all day long. I rested at home for 2 full days before I recovered a little bit of strength. Just as I was about to ask Sarah Johnson for an explanation, Mike Smith suddenly smashed the luxury store Tiffany & Company. And then drove at 120 miles per hour in downtown, rear-ending 20 cars. I advised Mike Smith to turn himself in as soon as possible and prepare to actively pay compensation by selling his car and house. But Mike Smith just smiled contemptuously and said, "David Lee, what does my hit and run and smashing the luxury store have to do with me? Why should I sell my car and house?" Sarah Johnson also threw out the divorce papers that she had tricked me into signing long ago, and said coldly, "David Lee, we divorced a long time ago. You go to jail yourself. The car and house were mine to begin with. Don't even think about getting your hands on them." I didn't understand why I had to pay compensation when Mike Smith was the one who did bad things. But the luxury store manager and the victims of the car accident came to me one after another, demanding compensation. They even took out the surveillance footage, which clearly showed my face. The evidence is irrefutable. David Lee, you still want to deny it? Hurry up and pay the money. More than 20 car accidents. You can't repay it even with your life. I looked at my face on the surveillance footage and couldn't figure it out. I didn't do it, so why was my face on it? But having lived this life again, I will never repeat the same mistakes. 5 days later, I was released from the police station. Before I could breathe in the fresh air, someone suddenly grabbed my arm. He was aggressive and cursed, "You're the bastard who put my wife in the hospital. I'm going to beat you to death." As he said that, he grabbed my collar and tried to pull me out. I quickly took a step back. A large crowd gathered around me, their faces fierce, wishing they could tear me to pieces. David Lee, you murderer. I think you're just faking it. What depression? You not only smashed people's luxury store, but also drove at 120 miles per hour in downtown. Do you not want to live? Hearing about the 120 miles per hour in downtown, the surrounding passers-by were also attracted, and some even started broadcasting live. Facing the aggressive crowd, I clenched my fists. I've already locked myself in the police station in this last life, but they still won't let me go? But I quickly calmed down and said loudly, "Don't talk nonsense and falsely accuse me." The person broadcasting live sneered, took out another phone, and handed me a video. Who's falsely accusing you? Take a look for yourself. I saw in the video that Mom and I entered the luxury store together, looked around, and had a small argument. Suddenly, I lost control and smashed a display case with my phone. Mom grabbed my hand and shouted, "David Lee, stop smashing it, stop smashing it. We can't afford to pay for it." The person in the video was expressionless and even kicked Mom to the ground. Mom fell to the ground, clutching her chest and shouting, "The one inside is my son David Lee. He has depression and can't control himself." My heart sank. In my last life, it was Sarah Johnson who shouted that I had depression at the entrance of Tiffany and Company. But in this last life, the first thing I did when I came back was to beat Sarah Johnson into the hospital, and I went to the police station to hide for 5 days. But the person who shouted that I had depression and shouted my name became my own mom. How could this be? Now you can't deny it, can you? The smashing of the luxury store a few days ago was already trending, and now that the criminal suspect had been found, it immediately went viral on the live broadcast. I was expressionless, staring at my own face in the video. The luxury store manager handed the invoice to my face, his chest heaving with anger. You smashed 3 display cases in one go that day. The jewelry inside was damaged to varying degrees, totaling $5 million. Some of them were even out of print. It's all because of you. Now everything is gone. A big brother who was hit by the car was even more angry. My wife is 3 months pregnant. She was so scared by your car accident that she is still in the hospital for. You even dared to commit a hit and run. Now that I've caught you, come with me to see the police officer immediately. As he said that, he tried to drag me to the police station. Yes, this kind of person should be sentenced to death and never be tolerated. The big brother received a response from everyone, and everyone was angry about what I had done. It took me a long time to break free and shout, "Calm down, I didn't do any of this." The store manager sneered, "Your mom called your name in the store, how could it not be you?" I explained, "Mike Smith did these things. He is my wife's old flame. If you don't believe me, you can ask my wife. He was the one who smashed the jewelry store. He was also the one who drove at 120 miles per hour in downtown." Just as I was seriously explaining to these people, I suddenly felt a pain in my face. Sarah Johnson appeared out of nowhere and slapped me hard. "You still want to falsely accuse Mike Smith? You're incorrigible. You've done all kinds of bad things and you still don't know how to repent. Hurry up and admit your mistakes to them." As she said that, she tried to force my head to kneel down. I struggled desperately and shouted, "I didn't do it, why should I admit my mistake?" At this moment, Mike Smith poked his head out from behind her, looking like he had been wronged. "David Lee, what's wrong with you now? Sarah Johnson is so good to you, and you even beat her into the hospital. Now she's even worried about you and wants you to get leniency. That's why she's asking you to apologize." Mike Smith's words touched the hearts of everyone, and they looked at me with even more contempt. The attacks on the live broadcast were even more fierce, and some people even doxed my address. I stared at Mike Smith and asked, "I said I didn't do it, why are you so excited?" Sarah Johnson wanted to slap me hard again, but I raised my hand to stop her. I looked at her coldly. I said Mike Smith did these things. What are you doing now? Are you trying to force a confession? Seeing that Dee was pointing at him, Mike Smith shouted, "David Lee, how can you wrong me like this? Yes, I know I used to be close to your wife Sarah Johnson, but we really just grew up as childhood sweethearts. To keep you from worrying, I even went to other cities. I've been tolerating you all these years, not because I'm afraid of you, but because I don't want your condition to worsen." David Lee, turn back. Mike Smith's made everyone look at me with even more contempt. I think this person's illness is self-inflicted. He's neurotic all day long and sees everyone as a rival in love. People are kindly, but his attack power is so strong. I dare to predict that his son can't be a child model. The live broadcast was full of laughter and jokes about me. Sarah Johnson was even more angry when she saw this and kicked my back leg on the knee, apologized quickly. Mom also appeared at this time. She looked at me with disappointment. "David Lee, turn yourself in. We went to Tiffany and Company together yesterday. Others don't know, but I'm your own mom. Don't I know?" Sarah Johnson pressed down on my calf, and everyone around me was me. Some people even threw rotten eggs at me. The egg smashed on my head and instantly shattered, and foul-smelling yolk flowed down my forehead. The commotion finally attracted the attention of the police officer. "Stop, stop everyone." Soon the police officer separated me from the crowd. The police officer was stunned for a moment when he saw me, and then asked seriously, "David Lee, why aren't you home yet? Why are you causing trouble outside again?" Seeing the police officer, I shrank my neck back unconsciously and immediately grabbed his hand. "Officer, you're finally here. Please save me." The big brother who had the car accident sneered, "How could the police officer save a social scum like you?" Sarah Johnson also sighed, "David Lee, turn yourself in and try to get a lighter sentence." The police officer looked at everyone in confusion and finally realized that something was wrong. "You've only been out for a few minutes, what did you do again?" I ignored everyone's surprised eyes and slowly said, "They insist that I went to smash Tiffany and Company yesterday. That's a luxury store. I usually don't even dare to go in. They also said that I drove at 120 miles per hour in downtown. Look, they've all come to my door and are asking me for an explanation at the first opportunity." The police officer said woodenly, "How could it be you?" When everyone looked at each other, Sarah Johnson suddenly shouted, "David Lee, what did you do to protect you? You damaged millions of dollars worth of jewelry at the luxury store, and there are so many cars that were damaged, and there are lives involved. You dare to protect you in this situation." In response, the live broadcast mobile phone instantly hit the police officer's face. The barrage was full of comments suspecting that we had an improper transaction. The police officer quickly saw these comments and his face darkened. "What nonsense are you talking about? David Lee has been performing well in the police station these days. How could he be the one doing these things outside?" Everyone was stunned for a moment, and the barrage of netizens on the live broadcast also froze for a moment. Then it became even more lively. That is to say, David Lee was locked up in prison for 5 days, but yesterday's smashing of the luxury store and the car accident were still David Lee? How is that possible? Unless David Lee has the ability to be in 2 places at once. The victims who came to me for an explanation also hesitated. I slowly stood up and said sincerely, "Everyone, although I don't know why my face is on the surveillance footage, I have been performing well in the police station during this time yesterday and have never been out." At this time, a netizen on the live broadcast suggested, "Could the video be fake?" The luxury store owner was the first to jump out. "How is that possible? This is the surveillance video from my store." But in order to find out the truth, the police officer still called in technicians to verify these surveillance videos. The result was beyond everyone's expectations. The surveillance video was real, but it was indeed my face on it. Everyone started talking. Sarah Johnson, with a hideous wound on her face, rolled her eyes and suddenly came up with a plan. This is David Lee. I've shared a bed with him for so many years. I can't be wrong. He must have sneaked out. He has depression. He must have had an episode in prison, so he could go to the hospital. He must have sneaked out of the hospital. Mike Smith also exclaimed in agreement, "That's right, David Lee used to rely on his depression and sneak out after going to the hospital. Officer, now the evidence is irrefutable, arrest him quickly." Everyone seemed to have found a backbone and started to me again, "Arrest him." The police officer said with a cold face, "David Lee has never been to the hospital during his time in the county jail." He had just finished saying this confidently when another police officer walked over with a slightly embarrassed look. "David Lee said he was not feeling well yesterday. We were worried about an episode, so we did take him to the hospital." As soon as these words came out, Mike Smith immediately became excited. "Officer. See, I was right, sentence him to death." Even the police officer's eyes were different when he looked at me. I looked at the two police officers for help. "Officer, you have to prove my innocence. I was arrested 5 days ago. Although I went to the hospital yesterday, you were with me all the time." The police officer lowered his head and said softly, "I didn't go in during the urology exam." Mike Smith immediately said loudly, "Yes, David Lee must have sneaked out during the urology exam. That hospital is not far from Tiffany and Company. If you confess everything now, you can get leniency." Mike Smith's earnest words, pretending to be doing it for my own good, made the netizens on the live broadcast exclaim that he was a magnanimous person. I treated him like this, but he still considered me so much. The crowd became noisy again. They kept approaching me, pushing and shoving, and some even started to hit me. I was like duckweed, pushed back and forth, and my face was also injured. But there was a smile on the corner of my mouth. It wasn't because I was crazy, but because I had already expected that Mike Smith wouldn't let me off easily. But how could I not be prepared? "Stop! I can prove that David Lee didn't do these things." Hearing this voice, the corners of my mouth turned up to the maximum. The person I was waiting for had finally arrived. A simply dressed man pushed through the crowd and walked up to me. "What are you all doing? What's the point of falsely accusing others without any evidence?" The store manager at the front said, dissatisfied, "Who said there's no evidence? Besides, what's it to you? Who are you?" The store manager started, and everyone was aggressive and shifted their attacks to the newcomer. Just as the insults were about to drown the two of us, the big brother who had the car accident suddenly shouted, "Everyone get out of the way." Then he shook the newcomer's hands warmly. "John Smith. Why are you here?" Everyone looked at each other, looking at the big brother who had just been shouting to hunt down the murderer, not understanding why he was so respectful to this person. The big brother explained, "This is John Smith, the reporter who rushed to rescue the victims of yesterday's car accident. My wife was pregnant and he saved her. I rode his electric bicycle to take my wife to the hospital to save the child. Moreover, John Smith also brought a medical team to rescue the others as soon as possible. That's why no one died in the accident that involved more than 20 cars." When everyone heard this, they paid their respects to John Smith. Even the live broadcast was constantly liking him. This is a real hero. But why would such a hero protect David Lee, this bad guy? The people present couldn't help but ask this question. "Big reporter, you're here just in time, quickly expose this person." But seeing John Smith protecting me like a mother hen protecting her chicks, everyone's eyes gradually changed when they looked at him. "John Smith, you save people, you're a good person. But what do you mean by protecting David Lee now? Did he bribe you too? You don't know, David Lee caused yesterday's car accident. If it wasn't for him, so many people wouldn't have been injured. Yes, look at how unconcerned he looks now. He doesn't realize that he's wrong at all. He's still smiling. I was indeed more relaxed since John Smith came, but I wasn't smiling as they said. At this moment, Sarah Johnson suddenly knelt down in front of me with a plop. "Husband, I beg you to admit your mistake. I didn't care enough about you. I'll make up for it. You can go to jail with peace of mind." The netizens on the live broadcast were moved by this kneeling wife and scolded me as social scum. Amid the insults, John Smith shouted, and the surroundings instantly quieted down. "Stop arguing. David Lee didn't smash the luxury store or cause the car accident in downtown. The luxury store manager was the first to disagree. How is that possible? The cameras captured it clearly." John Smith immediately said, "You have evidence, and I have it too, and I have more than one piece. Moreover, I have been with David Lee all these days, including when he went for the urology exam." Everyone was in an uproar. John Smith continued to explain, "I was wrongly arrested and imprisoned because I was an undercover agent and didn't reveal my identity. I met David Lee inside. He told me about his relationship with his family." As he said that, John Smith looked at Sarah Johnson and Mike Smith meaningfully. They both panicked instantly. "Before I was released from prison, David Lee asked me to go to Main Street as soon as possible, saying that his wife might be having an affair, and asked me to collect evidence for him. But I didn't expect to encounter such a big accident as soon as I went. I rushed to Main Street as soon as I was released from prison. The car accident had already happened at that time. Even if David Lee came out immediately after I was released from prison, he couldn't be faster than me." Others still wanted to question whether John Smith was cooperating with me to lie. But some people on the internet recognized him. "Isn't this the reporter who went undercover in the coal mine for more than half a year before exposing the problems of people's livelihood?" Yes, it's him. If it wasn't for him, no one would have known about the kerosene car. I also know him. He once went undercover to expose pyramid schemes. The other victims present also exclaimed and thanked John Smith for his past great deeds. This was clearly an opportunity to prove my innocence, but my family's faces were gloomy. The luxury store manager scratched his head and said puzzled, "But I also have a video in my hand, and mine is also real." Although the others didn't understand what was going on, they looked at John Smith in confusion. At this time, I finally spoke. "I not only have a witness, but I also have physical evidence." The police officer also brought in technicians and took out several more videos. I just asked the technicians for the surveillance footage from this period of time. David Lee has been in prison all the time, and there is 24-hour surveillance. The only time he wasn't at the police station was when he went to the hospital, and I also found the surrounding surveillance footage, which showed that he didn't leave the hospital. Mike Smith muttered, "Who knows if you took his money and protected him?" The police officer was amused. "Don't be unreasonable. If you think I have any illegal behavior, you are welcome to report me at any time. But it is against the law to repeatedly spread rumors about the police officer." As he said that, the police officer led everyone to the TV and fast-forwarded the playback of my daily life for the past 5 days. When they saw that I only used 1 minute to go to the toilet and only 3 minutes to take a shower, the netizens couldn't sit still. Wouldn't David Lee teleport to the luxury store to smash it in this 1 minute? Ha 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 ha. I think David Lee was speeding at 120 miles per hour in these 3 minutes. After the netizens, many people had a better impression of me. I almost wronged a good person. I knew from David Lee's appearance that he wasn't the kind of heartless person. That's right, and he looks really kind. He didn't even fight back when those people pushed him and almost hit him. Sarah Johnson's face became even more ugly when she saw these comments, and there was a visible look of panic in her eyes. She, Mike Smith, and Mom actually wanted to sneak away when people weren't paying attention. But I had suffered so much, how could I watch them run away? "Mom, where are you going? Wife, are you going to elope with your old flame?" Seeing me say her relationship with Mike Smith so openly, Sarah Johnson almost fell. She stammered, "You. What nonsense are you talking about?" I pretended to be puzzled. I'm not talking nonsense. John Smith also said just now that if it wasn't because I found out you were having an affair, how would he have helped me find evidence, and how would he have happened to discover the car accident? The netizens were instantly attracted by the new gossip, and the number of people in the live broadcast reached a small climax. Sarah Johnson was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, and she exploded instantly. Don't try to divert the topic. I have nothing to do with Mike Smith. You should still talk about the compensation. It's all recorded clearly on the surveillance. Hurry up and admit your mistake. All the evidence had been presented, but they still refused to give up and wanted to put me to death. Mom also chimed in, David Lee, although I don't know what tricks you used, I went to the street with you yesterday. You said you wanted to buy a watch. I looked at the price, tens of thousands of dollars. I couldn't afford it, so you suddenly went crazy and started damaging the display case. Did you have an episode of depression and imagine things in your head? That's why you misunderstood that Sarah Johnson and Mike Smith had an improper relationship? Mike Smith also said, David Lee, Sarah Johnson and I really don't have anything. I sneered, everyone, I don't want to deal with my family affairs today. I'm sorry to have made you laugh, but these things have to be said. Everyone looked at me in confusion, and the big brother answered, why? I grabbed Mike Smith's arm and pulled him into the middle of the crowd, because the real culprit who smashed the luxury store, sped at 120 miles per hour in downtown, and injured many people is Mike Smith. The crowd was in an uproar. Mike Smith's face turned pale, and he struggled to break free from my grip. What nonsense are you talking about? Mom and Sarah Johnson also came forward to snatch Mike Smith. David Lee, I don't have a son like you. Husband, I'm willing to bear it with you. Don't splash dirty water on others. It sounded nice to say that she would bear it with me. In my last life, I didn't have the ability to prove my innocence, and Sarah Johnson immediately took out the divorce papers that she had tricked me into signing and let me face it alone. Mike Smith explained in a panic, David Lee, I know you mind that Sarah Johnson and I are childhood sweethearts, but I have already explained it very clearly. We really don't have any other relationship. But no one believed Mike Smith's words anymore. After all, the busybody netizens had already discovered that Sarah Johnson had been standing next to Mike Smith from the beginning of the live broadcast and hadn't said a word for me. If I hadn't seen it from beginning to end, I would have really thought that Sarah Johnson was Mike Smith's wife. I bet these two have definitely slept together. Look at the distance between their butts. Even if the woman is squatting, David Lee's butt is almost touching her face. Upstairs as Sherlock Holmes dash, Sarah Johnson's face became even more ugly when she saw these comments. David Lee, even if Sarah Johnson and I have a good relationship, it doesn't change the fact that you are a criminal. And why don't I help you? Don't you know why? Why am I covered in wounds? Isn't it all because you hit me? Everyone had a look of eating again. Before I could speak, Mom flew into a rage and raised her hand, wanting to slap me. But John Smith stopped her with quick eyes and hands. What are you doing? This is the police station. You can't hit people. Mom was angry and, I'm teaching my own son, what's it to you? The internet started to discuss again, if David Lee really didn't have any problems, how could his own wife not help him and his own mom not help her? I think David Lee did this. I don't know what tricks he used to bribe the police officer and this big reporter. Now he wants to splash dirty water on Mike Smith. The sharp-eyed Mike Smith also shouted, David Lee, why do you want to hurt me so much? Even the police officer and the reporter have been bribed by you. Before I could defend myself, the people around me started talking. What nonsense are you talking about? Although I don't know this police officer, I believe in his duty and faith. That's right, and John Smith is not the kind of person who can be bribed with money. The people almost drowned Mike Smith. I looked at Mom, who was rolling her eyes, and asked disappointedly, I also want to know, why do you insist that I did these things when you are my own biological mom? Actually, the surveillance footage in the luxury store didn't capture a clear face. It was you who kept shouting my name next to me that made everyone assume that I was the one who smashed the store. Mom sneered, you did it anyway. You falsely accused Mike Smith, but unfortunately he doesn't look like you at all. I ignored her and said to myself, when I was a child, I always wondered what kind of job was so busy that my mom only came back once a year. At that time, how much I longed for maternal love. Other people had their moms to pick them up, but I didn't. Mom interrupted me, "Don't say these nonsense things. I won't protect you if you do something wrong." Now I know why. All these years, you've had another family on the side. Mike Smith is your illegitimate son. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Mom's face contorted, she pointed at me, sputtering, unable to form a complete word. The comment section exploded, "No way, poor David Lee. His wife cheated with his own mom's illegitimate son. That explains why Mom was always helping Mike Smith." Mike Smith, looking guilty, raised his voice, "Don't listen to her nonsense. I don't even know her." He took a step back, distancing himself from Mom. "Don't pretend. You two arrived together. Why are you acting like strangers? And you've been tag-teaming, pressuring David Lee to confess." Everyone present wasn't stupid, and they quickly caught on. Mike Smith, his neck stiff, lashed out, "The video is clear, it's David Lee. Besides, we don't even look alike. Why are you accusing me? And the hospital footage only shows the outside. What if he bribed the doctors or the police?" The surveillance footage on TV continued to play. After all, it was 5 days' worth, and even sped up, it would take hours to watch. The officer pointed to the surveillance footage and said, "The luxury store didn't capture high-definition photos, but our county jail sees countless face-to-face videos every day. Are you suggesting our county jail surveillance was hacked?" The officer's voice took on a stern edge. John Smith frowned. "Are you implying that I, who accompanied David Lee inside, was also bribed? Do you know how many cases I've investigated where people offered tens of millions to bribe me, even threatening my family's lives? Have I ever compromised? You're insulting my integrity." Mike Smith's reaction not only angered the officer and John Smith, but also drew more ridicule from the online viewers. All the evidence is out, and this guy is still yapping like a clown. I bet he's guilty. Could he really have done it? But Mike Smith doesn't look anything like the face in the surveillance footage. David Lee's handsome face is way better looking than Mike Smith's mean, sharp features anyway. The netizens, lacking all tact, began to comment on Mike Smith's physical flaws, tearing him to shreds. Finally, Mike Smith snapped. "Are you all blind? What's so good about that David Lee, that bastard? He's nothing compared to me. Even Sarah Johnson only ended up with him because I didn't want her." Mike Smith's eyes were bloodshot as he glared at me. "David Lee, you were meant to be under my heel forever." He ranted even louder, ignoring Sarah Johnson and Mom's attempts to pull him back. Just as his emotions peaked and he was about to lunge at me, the officer suddenly grabbed him, putting him in a scissor lock on the ground. Mike Smith sobered up and immediately begged for mercy. "Officer, why are you arresting me? Isn't it legal to curse? First, cursing is against the law. Second, you're not being arrested for cursing," the officer replied. Mike Smith screeched in pain. "I knew you were in cahoots with David Lee. You're arresting me to get revenge for him, aren't you? Everyone, look! The officer is assaulting me." Seeing that his mistress and illegitimate son identities were exposed, and that his pathetic attempts to gain sympathy were failing, Mike Smith decided to go all in, lashing out at anyone he could. The live stream attracted even more viewers, even drawing in some influencers. The first wave of influencers arrived, setting up tripods and shining several spotlights on Mike Smith. "Hello everyone, I'm here to uncover the truth behind the incident. Mike Smith, both an illegitimate son and a mistress, would he stoop so low as to vandalize a luxury store and crash into 20 cars? Mike Smith tried to argue, telling the streamer to get lost, but the officer held him down firmly. "Officer, what crime have I committed? Tell me. Another officer arrived, handcuffing Mike Smith before coldly stating, "Don't you know what crimes you've committed? And you had the nerve to come to the police station to falsely accuse people." Mike Smith immediately denied it. "What nonsense are you talking about? What does the vandalism have to do with me? Besides, I don't even have a driver's license. How could I have crashed into anyone?" The officer scoffed. "I don't know how you disguised yourself as David Lee, but you've seriously underestimated us officers. Didn't you know that fingerprint technology is widely used? Although your disguise was good, and your mom and Sarah Johnson cooperated well, the fingerprint analysis is out, and it's a perfect match." Mike Smith still tried to argue. "You're lying. David Lee must have worn gloves with my fingerprints on them. It can all be manipulated." But no one there would listen to his explanations. After the officer presented the fingerprint evidence, they swarmed Mike Smith. "My son was injured in the car accident. Pay my medical bills. I missed a job interview and lost such a good opportunity, all because of you. Pay me. The jewelry you damaged can only be scrapped. They can't be sold. You're responsible for all of this." Although there were officers on the scene, they couldn't hold back the crowd. So Mike Smith, in handcuffs, was dragged away from the officers by 7 or 8 hands. Mike Smith screamed apologies, but his words were quickly drowned out by the crowd's anger. "Sarah Johnson and Mom saw things were going south and tried to slip away, but I grabbed them." "What are you afraid of? Mike Smith couldn't have done this alone. He needed your help." My words seemed to remind some people. "That's right, they're accomplices. Make them pay too. Pay up." Sarah Johnson and Mom were also swallowed by the crowd. In the scuffle, Mike Smith's clothes were torn, revealing a skin-like mask underneath. Everyone recoiled at the sight of the eerie object. John Smith stepped forward, picking it up for closer inspection. "You used this to disguise yourself as David Lee, didn't you? The craftsmanship is quite detailed, but it can't be cheap. How did you know?" Mike Smith realized he had indirectly admitted it and quickly covered his mouth. John Smith said calmly, "I was mistakenly arrested and taken to the police station because I was investigating this matter. It seems you're deeply involved in this major case." Seeing all the evidence exposed, Mike Smith finally broke down completely. His eyes, filled with resentment, stared at me, alternating between crying and laughing, completely deranged. "If it weren't for you, I could have openly had Mom. And Sarah Johnson too. We were childhood sweethearts, but just because your dad had more money than mine, she abandoned me and went after you. It's all your fault, David Lee. If you just died, all of this would be mine." Looking at the crazed Mike Smith, I only felt sadness. The time I openly spent with Mom was only a day or two a year, and Sarah Johnson, although married to me, was having an affair with Mike Smith. All of this was the fault of 2 women, yet Mike Smith didn't blame them, instead directing his anger at me. But I wouldn't sympathize with him. I looked at him coldly, and smiled dismissively. "What does your unhappiness have to do with me? It's all because you placed your happiness on 2 women. I'm telling you, I divorced Sarah Johnson a long time ago, but she didn't marry you, did she?" Sarah Johnson asked in surprise. "David Lee, how did you know?" I sneered. "In my last life, Sarah Johnson tricked me into signing the divorce papers before everything happened. In this life, how could I not be prepared?" But I had already changed the property division so that Sarah Johnson would walk away with nothing. The farce finally ended. Mike Smith was arrested and sentenced to death. His debts fell on Mom. Pathetic, she had to work on construction sites in her old age to pay off the money. Finally, one late night while working overtime, she fell from a high-rise building and ended her miserable life. Sarah Johnson came to find me several times afterwards, but I refused to see her. The last time, she tried to climb the tree and get in through the window, but she slipped and fell straight from the tree, becoming a vegetable. Now, she can